the ascension and the request for wisdom. Imagine a young king only 20 years old, ascending to the throne of a vast and turbulent kingdom. Solomon was not a warrior forged in battle like his father, David, the lion hunter and victor over Philistine armies. He was inexperienced, surrounded by astute counselors and a people exhausted by war, longing for peace and prosperity. The expectations were overwhelming: maintain the unity of Israel, judge impossible disputes, build an eternal legacy. Alone he knew he would fail. Few names in the scriptures spark as much curiosity as Solomon, king of Israel, son of the legendary David. Heir to a throne marked by wars and prophecies, Solomon ascended not only as a monarch but as a symbol of wisdom, spiritual power and unresolved mysteries. His trajectory fascinates scholars, unsettles theologians and raises questions to this day. Solomon did not begin his story in darkness. His ascent was marked by a rare moment in the scriptures, a direct encounter with God in a dream. After offering 1,000 burnt offerings on the altar of Gibeon, the Lord appeared to him and said, "Ask what I shall give you." 1 Kings 3 verse 5. There was no hesitation. Solomon did not ask for glory, victories, wealth, or longevity. He said, "I am but a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in. Give your servant therefore an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" 1 Kings 3 verses 7 to 9. The heavens must have rejoiced because in that moment Solomon understood something that few understand. True strength is not in what you possess, but in recognizing that you need someone greater than you. This humility changes everything. God not only grants incomparable wisdom but adds wealth and honor as a bonus. And God responded not only with wisdom but with everything Solomon did not ask for. Wealth that no king had known. Honor that would make nations tremble. A name that would echo for millennia. Solomon awakens as the wisest man on earth. If this attitude of humility inspired you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next stories that transform lives. The peak of wisdom and fame. Solomon's wisdom became legendary, and his fame spread like wildfire. Kings from distant lands, the Queen of Sheba with her caravan of gold, spices and precious stones, Egyptian pharaohs, Arab sovereigns, crossed scorching deserts and stormy seas just to hear him. "Tell me how to solve this," they implored. Solomon responded with words that cut like sharp blades, revealing hidden truths. The Queen of Sheba, after testing his wisdom with impossible riddles, declared, "The half was not told me. Blessed be the Lord your God," and delivered 120 talents of gold, tons of pure wealth. The judgment of the true mother. A case that echoes through eternity defined his legend. Two prostitutes disputed a living baby. One said, "It is my son born yesterday." The other, "No, yours died suffocated in the night, this one is mine." No witnesses, no proof. Experienced judges shook their heads in defeat. Solomon, impassive, sat on the ivory throne, penetrating eyes. The court fell silent. Everyone looked at the young king. How to judge something like this? Solomon remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "Bring me a sword." The court freezes. "Divide the child in two, give half to each." Screams of horror echo. One woman falls to her knees. "No. Give her the child but do not kill it. Mercy." The other, cold eyes, "Divide it, neither she nor I will have it whole." Solomon raises his hand. The mother is the one who pleaded for his life. "Give the child to the first." The crowd explodes in reverence, knees on the ground. God is with Israel. Solomon has a divine heart. News flies like eagles, from Damascus to Thebes, from Carthage to Babylon. Powerful leaders tremble at such discernment. 1 Kings 3 verse 28 says that all Israel feared the king, because they saw the wisdom of God in him. The wisdom of God, not Solomon's intelligence. Did this story impact you? Share this video with someone who needs wisdom to make difficult decisions. And activate the bell to receive the next content. Unmatched opulence. His court becomes a spectacle of unmatched opulence. Gold flows like endless rivers, 666 talents annually, about 25 tons. Pure gold shields, 200 large shields, 300 smaller ones, guard the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Ivory thrones overlaid with pure gold, with 12 lions on each side. Hanging gardens rivaling the Babylonians, stables with 12,000 horses and 40,000 mules for chariots. Phoenician ships, with Hiram of Tyre, bring exotic peacocks, golden monkeys, almug wood from Ophir. Solomon composes 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. His botanical gardens display exotic trees, immense cedars from Lebanon, almond trees from Ophir, sandalwood, myrrh. He classifies plants, animals, reptiles, fish, an encyclopedist avant la lettre, knowing the name of every creature under the sun. The Temple of Jerusalem, the pinnacle of divine glory. His greatest feat, David's dream realized. Solomon had a dream greater than his throne, to build a house for God. His father David planned, gathered materials, gathered cedar and gold for years. But God said no, warrior hands would not raise the temple. This privilege would belong to the Son of Peace. Not just any building but a colossal work. 183,000 workers, 30,000 stone cutters in Lebanon, 70,000 carriers, 80,000 masons. 7 years of work. Cedar from Lebanon. Gold covering everything. Stones fitted with silent perfection. No hammer, no chisel. Pure gold on the internal walls, 200 tons beaten by hammer. Giant cherubim of 10 meters, wings extended touching wall to wall. The courtyard with Hiram's bronzes, 2 pillars of 8 meters, Jachin and Boaz. The Holy of Holies, covered in gold, houses the Ark of the Covenant with the tablets of Moses. The same Ark that guided Israel in the desert. The presence that made seas open before Moses. At the dedication, Solomon prays on his knees for 7 days, arms raised to heaven. Lord God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven or on earth. And then it happened. Fire descends from heaven like thunder, consumes burnt offerings of bulls, sheep, lambs, 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. The glory of God descended like a heavy cloud. So intense that the priests could not stand. Priests flee coughing, the people fall face down, trembling with holy terror. Heaven had touched the earth. Israel had never seen anything like this. The Lord dwells among us. They clamor in unison. Solomon blesses the crowd. Blessed be he who makes Israel prosper. He seems untouchable, king, wise, rich, pious, eternal temple. What a powerful moment. If you believe that God still dwells among us, leave your like and subscribe to be part of our community of faith and knowledge. Spiritual erosion, idolatry and compromises. But the poison acts slowly, like a corrosive mist that rusts steel. The true decadence of a king rarely begins with the fall. It usually announces itself subtly, dressed in promises, adorned with alliances, disguised as good intentions. It all starts with smart alliances. To seal treaties with Egypt, Moab, Edom, Sidon, Hittites, Solomon marries 700 princesses and 300 concubines from foreign lands. They arrive in palace harems bringing pagan gods, Ashtoreth, goddess of sex, Milcom, devourer of children, Chemosh, god of war. At first, Solomon tolerates it, politics, lasting peace. But the heart divides like a bifurcated river. The scriptures are clear in declaring that Solomon loved many foreign women. The sacred text states, "For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father." 1 Kings 11 verse 4. This rupture was not instant. It was born from the accumulation of the silent repetition of decisions that prioritized the political over the spiritual. Instead of maintaining the limits that the Lord established, Solomon extended them to receive princesses in his bed. Altogether there were 700 wives, princesses and 300 concubines. They were not empty numbers, but reflections of a divided heart, split between the altar of the true God and the desires of seduced flesh. And each woman, upon being welcomed, brought with her an altar, an image, a strange song. What was meant to be just a peace strategy became a silent army of spiritual influence. In a short time, hills were erected with altars for Ashtoreth, the Sidonian goddess, and for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites. Sacrifices that were never ordered by God began to burn in the lands of Israel with the consent of the king who had asked for wisdom. Idolatry did not arrive with violence. It came adorned with gold, velvets, and promises of unity between peoples. At 60 years old, elderly and tired, he builds idolatrous high places on the hills of Jerusalem. He burns incense for Ashtoreth, Molech. The wise man who discerned good and evil now wields the sword against prophets like Nathan, who confronts him, "Why do you do this? Your heart has turned away." His son Rehoboam grows up among idols, learning hypocrisy. The house that was once full of the presence of God was now populated by strange symbols. Images took over the corridors. Idols settled where there was once prayer. Syncretism was the open door to destruction. What should be exclusive became common. What was sacred was profaned by coexistence. Attention, What comes next reveals how small concessions can lead to the greatest falls. Do not leave. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Click the button and activate notifications. The shadows of the occult, legends and spirits. His trajectory fascinates scholars and raises questions to this day. How did the wisest man who ever lived lose himself in the shadows of his own heart? How did someone chosen by God end up involved with 72 demons and a ring with a spiritual seal? And the most disconcerting? Did the construction of the Temple of Jerusalem involve occult forces that no one dares to mention? The wisdom that was given as a gift from God should be maintained with humility and fear. By neglecting this, Solomon began to forget that one cannot govern the spiritual world with the logic of men. And it was precisely this wisdom that placed him before paths where human discernment could not guide him. While he raised cedar pillars and covered the temple with gold, the king's spirit began to seek something more, something that was not supplied by glory, nor by gold, nor by the words of admiration from the kings of the earth. This search would lead him to dangerous horizons, where the invisible mixes with the occult and where the name of God can be used, but not invoked in truth. Solomon believed he was prepared to deal with the deepest secrets of the universe. And this conviction would be the breach through which deception would find space. The story of the wisest king in the world was about to cross the limits of divine revelation and enter the shadows of forbidden curiosity. There was a time when Solomon entered his quarters and the presence of God enveloped him like an invisible mantle. But as the years passed, something began to change, like the light of dusk that fades without being perceived. He who once heard the voice of God clearly now found himself surrounded by an uncomfortable silence. The dreams ceased, the revelations diminished, the temple was standing, but the glory had departed. On the throne, Solomon maintained the appearance of dominion, but inside there was emptiness. Where God silences, other voices begin to approach. It was in this spiritual atmosphere that strange reports began in the palace corridors. A young servant said he felt an invisible presence that sucked his strength and will to live. The elders called it illness, others spiritual weakness. But the king listened carefully. Something in him recognized that. The name of a spirit emerged that fed on the vitality of the young. It did not manifest with violence, it just sucked slowly. Solomon did not react with prayer, but with investigation. He ordered ancient books and occult records to be sought. His search was no longer communion but knowledge. The palace began to have secret rooms. Solomon wanted to understand the spiritual world through experimentation. And in this context, ancient reports emerge of an angel and a ring with a spiritual seal. The ring would give authority to subjugate entities. As soon as the ring was used, the spirit manifested and began to be interrogated. The king had achieved control but not necessarily blessing. The spirit revealed that there were many others. Solomon then began to catalog entities, recording names, functions, and characteristics. The silence of God remained. What was revelation became information. And information without fear generates arrogance. He believed he was cataloging enemies, but in fact he was moving away from the source of life. The names began to multiply. And the number 72 began to emerge as a spiritual structure mentioned in the reports. Entities described as ancient rebels. Solomon began to see them as a system to be understood. And the line between discernment and dangerous curiosity disappeared. Over time the records increased. The king no longer sought only to understand, but to dominate the invisible. The spirits began to obey the seal, but there was no reverence. Only forced submission. And this revealed to the king an illusion of control. He believed he was doing something divine. But the confusion between mission and vanity became complete. The temple continued to be built while, behind the scenes, something very different was happening. The final records point to the consolidation of a spiritual catalog. And the silence of God remained absolute. The man who asked for wisdom now tried to understand forces that should never have been worshipped. And the emptiness grew. Communion gave way to manipulation. And where revelation once flowed, control was now established. The temple, yes, would be consecrated. The glory of God, yes, would descend, but the price for all that would still be charged. For God can, at times, honor the faith of a people, even when their leader is corrupted. He can respond to the sincere clamor of those who do not know what is happening behind the scenes, but he cannot be deceived. And Solomon's throne, although shining, began to tilt. The forbidden, silent, and invisible help was already leaving marks. And among the sacred stones of that temple rested echoes of voices that did not belong to the altar, and that would soon demand more than they were forced to offer, for no alliance with darkness ends without payment. And Solomon did not know yet, But the 72 were just beginning to reveal what they really desired. The final corruption, when the seal became a prison. The temple was erected, the curtains had been hung, the sacred utensils consecrated, the Levites tuned the instruments, and the trumpets of the great day were ready to echo. On the outside, Israel seemed to be living its peak. But in Solomon's spirit, another construction was consolidating. A temple of shadows, invisible but real. He had used the seal, he had interrogated, classified, dominated, and now surrounded by secrets, dangerous alliances, and knowledge that surpassed what God had ordered. Solomon carried the ring not as a key of authority, but as a prison. He who once asked for wisdom to discern between good and evil, had now become a man of multiple discernments, many of them corrupted by sources that should never have been accessed. The seal, once a symbol of dominion, was now his greatest weight. He no longer removed it from his finger, not out of devotion but out of necessity. The seal gave him access, but also kept him trapped in a cycle that he no longer knew how to break. The name of Beelzebub began to appear more frequently in the sessions. The 72 demons, previously restless and disorganized, now seemed to align around one of them. Beelzebub, called in some traditions Lord of the Flies, was held as one of the princes of the fallen hosts. His name, although it does not appear in the original narrative of Solomon in the biblical books, is mentioned centuries later by Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 12 as Prince of the Demons. This suggests that his influence is lasting, deep, and silently organized. And it was with him that Solomon wanted to dialogue. According to non-canonical records, Solomon would have tried to summon Beelzebub with the same method used for the others, but something was different. The environment became heavy, the ring trembled, the scribes feared entering the chamber. And when Beelzebub appeared, he did not bow like the others. He looked the king in the eyes, smiled, did not mock, just observed as if he knew that the game had changed. Beelzebub did not resist the summons, but neither did he demonstrate submission. He spoke of heaven, of his fall, of the divisions and spiritual orders, of the invisible wars fought between the centuries. He revealed secrets that even Solomon, with all his knowledge, did not know, and offered something more: power not only over the 72 but over legions. He said that Solomon could surpass the limitations of the visible world, govern over occult kingdoms, dominate the cycles of life and death, provided he was willing to pay the price. This price was not immediate. It did not involve written pacts with blood or visible sacrifices. It was more subtle, more dangerous. It involved the continuous delivery of consciousness, the acceptance of control as a vocation, the worship of power as an end in itself. And Solomon, already immersed in the illusion that he was doing everything in the name of good, did not perceive that he began to bow, even without bending his knees. It was thus that the seal became a prison. The king no longer invoked the spirits only out of curiosity or control. Now he sought revelations that no prophet of Israel had had. He began to write texts that mixed eternal truths with revelations from the abysses. His words, previously inspired by divine wisdom, began to carry weight, density, and mystery that confused more than they clarified. The presence of the Spirit of the Lord, which in his early days was constant, had now become intermittent. It had not departed completely, for God still honors his covenant, but he no longer spoke with clarity, he no longer directed with love. The voice of God had become a distant echo between the corridors of Solomon's heart. The ring, according to some traditions, began to heat up in the king's hands. Its presence bothered, its light darkened. Solomon slept poorly with recurring nightmares. He dreamed of figures that watched him from afar. The 72, who once bowed, now appeared in his dreams walking between the corridors of the temple. They never touched the altar but approached one by one, slowly. It was at this moment that the king began to perceive there was no return. He had touched what was not permitted, he had received what was not given. And even having raised the temple, he had neglected the true altar, the altar of the heart. And on that altar the fire had already gone out. Solomon began to consult Beelzebub more frequently. He sought answers but received riddles. He expected direction, he received proposals. And every time he did, the ring weighed more. The scribes began to fear the king. The priests no longer called him frequently. The court murmured. There was something somber in the air. The texts record that Solomon began to write symbols, circles, stars, unpronounceable names. He ordered drawings to be engraved on the floor of the secret chamber. He prepared utensils that were never used in the temple rituals. He created spaces where only he entered, and there, amidst the incense and silence, he believed he was unveiling the greatest mysteries of existence, but in fact he was only deepening his own fall. The wisdom that had elevated him to the heavens now dragged him into the depths. For when the gift is separated from obedience, it becomes a curse. And when power is used without fear, it transforms into slavery. Solomon, the king who began by asking for wisdom, now walked among the debris of a tormented mind, not by direct punishment, but by inevitable consequence. The seal continued there, shining, imposing, but its shine no longer came from the light of heaven. It was a false shine. It reflected not the presence of God, but the reflex of the choices of a king who traded the simplicity of fear for the fascination of control. And while this happened behind the scenes of reality, the 72 waited, observed, waited for the moment to charge the price, for no authority exercised over darkness remains without the darkness at some point wanting to reverse the game. And that moment was approaching. Did this part surprise you? If you want to understand more about the mysteries of faith and history, share this video and subscribe to the channel. There is much more content coming up. Divine judgment and the silent end. God warns through the prophet Ahijah, "Because of these women, I will tear the kingdom out of your hands. Not in your lifetime, for the sake of David, but in your sons." 10 tribes for another, Judah and Benjamin remain. Tensions boil, suffocating taxes to finance harems and chariots, 1,400 chariots. Forced labor drains the people. Solomon crushes rebellions with an iron fist, killing Adonijah, his half-brother, Shimei, even allies like Joab. After 40 years of reign, Solomon rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David, his father. No fanfare. No epic testament. No unifying successor. His son Rehoboam inherits ashes. The north rebels under Jeroboam, the fugitive laborer. In Shechem the people clamor, "Your father made our yoke heavy, lighten it." Rehoboam ignores old counselors, follows the young, "My finger will be thicker than my father's loins." Israel screams, "What portion do we have in David? Every man to his tents." 10 tribes go. Solomon's empire, from the Euphrates to Egypt, fragments into 2 enemy kingdoms. The dream collapses. Legacy and final reflection. In Ecclesiastes, a voice attributed to him echoes like a funeral lament, "Vanity of vanities. All is vanity and chasing after the wind. What has been is what will be, what has been done is what will be done. Generations come and go, but the earth remains. Well, like rat traps. Pleasure? Tiring as shepherding the wind. Wisdom fills the head with pain without profit. Power? Better a poor wise man than a foolish king. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of every man. God will bring every work to judgment. This phrase was not written by an animated young man, nor by a wise man at peace, but by a man who carried the weight of having crossed limits that should never have been touched. Why does this impact so profoundly? Solomon had everything: divine wisdom, greater than Solomon, said Jesus, global empire from Nile to Euphrates, celestial temple touched by God. But he lost the essential, the heart aligned with the author of wisdom. Small concessions, a strategic marriage, a political altar, eroded the giant like termites in an oak. It was not sudden weakness but invisible erosion, drop by drop. He began by asking for direction, heart that hears, ended dispersed, divided heart. This is not a lesson of total failure. Solomon is still an eternal icon of wisdom, cited by Jesus, studied for millennia. But visceral alert, success without vigilance devours the heart. Today billionaire CEOs fall into sexual scandals or fraud. Charismatic leaders implode in vices or megalomania. Talents wasted on digital distractions. Solomon whispers from the tomb, "Take care of the heart first, or the top becomes an abyss." The story of Solomon is not about the greatest king of antiquity. It is a mirror of human nature, how small choices repeated over the years change entire destinies. The final question is not about temples of gold or vast kingdoms. It is about what you become while you build. But here is the truth we forget. The greatest wisdom is not knowing everything, it is knowing that you need God. Solomon understood this once in Gibeon, humble and sincere. But the gift that made him great later would become that which exposed him. Because wisdom without continuous surrender becomes destructive pride. Every test reveals strength and weakness. And his weakness would not come from outside, it would come from within. But even glory can disappear when gratitude is gone. If this message touched your heart, do not keep it just for yourself. Leave your like. This helps the channel grow a lot. Subscribe and activate the bell so you do not miss the next videos. Share with someone who needs to hear this lesson today. Comment below, which part of Solomon's story marked you the most? Your interaction makes all the difference. Until the next video.